Hello, welcome back to the YouTube channel of Bethel Evangelical Free Church Hanley. I'm Pastor Charmley, and this is another video in the series on Derbyshire churches. This is the little church, I suppose it's not so little for the area, but this is the church of St Andrew, Cubley. It's an ancient building. You can probably just about see behind me here some Norman arches, or a Norman arch. Much of the building, certainly from the exterior, looks 15th century. But it's a Norman church that has been later extended and altered. It's not very far from Norbury, and so it's often overshadowed by its neighbour, because Norbury is, as we've seen, one of the great treasure churches of Derbyshire. But it's unfair to ignore Cubley. Cubley is one of my favourite churches. I love the building. It's a beautiful place. So let's have a look around and see quite why it is such a magnificent and lovely little church. As usual, we start at the west end. In this case, we start in the west tower because you come in through the tower. You can see the screen, the tower screen has curtains which have been drawn, and also you can see the church progresses uphill. We have here steps up from the tower into the nave, and then up from the nave into the chancel. This is because St Andrew's is built into the side of a hill, and so this upward progression follows more or less the natural lie of the land. We pass through the screen. The iron screen at the west end is a war memorial, and we pass into the nave, and you can see here the war memorial screen. You have the names of the men of the parish who died in the First World War. Captain George Lord Vernon Malta, Private Herbert Wilfred Smith Passchendaele, Private Arthur Sidney Goodall Bethune, Colonel Henry Arthur Clews Egypt, Private Thomas Bentley Ypres, Sergeant George Bentley Porcel. And you can see they go all the way from a nobleman to ordinary men fighting in the war. And of course centrally peace, Pax, because that is the hope of all who fight, that peace will be the result. The bells are rung from the tower. There is a south doorway, which obviously, if you've got bell rings in the tower, it's probably easier to use that. You can also see in the corner here, let's go and have a look at it, the font. And this is a lovely Norman tub. I like Norman tub fonts, at least I do. It's worn, it's battered, it's on a more modern stem. It's the font. Norman tubs are this size, as I've said in previous videos, because you need to be able to dip an infant inside it. You can see the windows here are square-headed. They look post-Reformation, perhaps 16th, 17th century. You can just also see the remains of a tomb recess that stood where the boarded vestry now is. There is the bier, dates from 1904, says the sign on the top, and the bier is used to carry coffins to burial, or at least it was back then. Now, of course, generally they've been retired, like this one. Piano, and that's the side of the organ. Now, the vestry, of course, is through there, and this is where we have this remains of a medieval 15th century, I would say, tomb recess. Little tapestry here, which dates from the 1860s and was made locally. It was, of course, quite common in those days as a sort of hobby, because no television or anything like that, a hobby for young women to make tapestries like that. Here again, we go back, you can see here pews with the back. I wonder if that's the old communion rail, because certainly there's a modern communion rail up there. Most of the seating is in these very simple benches, very, very simple actually, We have here the War Memorial, which not only records those who died, who of course are recorded in on the screen, but also those who came back. Those who came back. John Cave, Humphrey, OBE, Captain Royal Navy, North Sea. Mostly, of course, they are soldiers, but you've got that one naval captain. And above we have the old commandment boards. They would originally have been displayed elsewhere, perhaps above the chancel arch here. We have a painted memorial here, and here we have the Norman South Aisle arcade. On this end we've got a little man with his nice little little hairdo, little face, and then we have a floriated capital here, and then a plain capital, and there's a few little traces of wall painting. Originally there was a clerestory, well, not I say originally, at one point there was a clerestory, but changes in the building over the years mean that it's now internal. Here we have some wall painting. You can just see the patterns over the organ now, but it would of course have been just another arch. And also over the chancel arch, a little bit of wall painting, a little bit of post-medieval painted memorial, and the organ, Victorian by the look of it. Again, you have the dummy pipes that are painted here. It looks like it's a 2 manual with pedal board. The lectern stands on a platform, which makes it level with the screen, which is Victorian, and with the pulpit, also Victorian. The screen is painted with figures of angels playing instruments, and these little winged heads at the top. The heads are not terribly medieval, very Victorian, very sentimental, but the angels are more in imitation of the Middle Ages. You've got these lilies on the front, and there's the Advent wreath. They haven't taken it away yet. There we are. And we process up the stairs. One thing to look at before we do that, handrails. Very useful because there are 1, 2, 3, 4 steps, 5 steps up into the chancel. And that, of course, is because the whole thing is built into the side of a hill. So you can see from up here, we have got a good view down, don't we? Down to the War Memorial screen. A little bit of medieval work there. And this is basically the view from the pulpit. But the pulpit has this commanding view, and of course so does the lectern. Although anyone sitting in the aisle is going to have problems with the lectern because of the organ. And that wonderful Norman arcade that seems to be the only Norman part of this building. I mean, the lower walls here must be Norman, but the only thing that's recognisably Norman here is that arcade. It's like it's got a Norman backbone, and the rest is later. The chancel with these choir stalls, and again these simple benches. We've got St Andrew in a window there. These little memorials along the wall, and here we have another of these alabaster, a bit of alabaster tomb chest there, set in a later tomb recess. The altar is stone, as it would have been in the Middle Ages. Actually, we've got a bit of Norman work here, haven't we? And some medieval glass, just bits and pieces in that window. Little face. And I think that's a piece of, that's not a little face, that's a piece of foliage. And so we have here a medieval tomb chest with a knight on it, or what's left of him. He is missing his legs. Angels hold shields. The angels have been quite badly battered, but angels here hold shields, which would have been painted. Remember, all these were painted. And here we have, and I suspect that's a panel from the other side of that same tomb chest, we have these medieval people, 14th century people, again somewhat battered. You can see you've got a couple in the middle there, you've got an armoured knight, a gentleman in robes, you've got another robed figure there. And in the corner we have one of the interesting pieces. We have this somewhat battered alabaster memorial. It does look like a lady. She has her hands folded. Yes, 15th, 16th century. It's certainly quite late. The altar slab is a medieval one that was here, and at the Reformation they became illegal, and so they had to be destroyed. Well, very often what happened is, instead of being actually destroyed, they were buried, and as restoration happened in the 19th century, they'd be dug up, and they would be, in some cases, as here, restored, put in the chancel. It's not a very Protestant thing to do, to have these altar slabs, but the Victorians did like to restore them. You can see there's an interesting bit here of pebble work, and again, that's got to be Norman, original. Just as that, because those columns at the base of the chancel arch are Norman. The arch isn't. The arch is perhaps 13th, 14th century, but the columns are the original Norman. And what's happened is the Norman rounded arch has been replaced, and probably the columns have been moved further apart, but there may have been a Norman arch that kind of size. You see again the knight here, and he has at his feet not a lion. They generally have lions at their feet, but he has his hunting dog. I mean, that chain around the neck says hunting dog to me. Here we have a memorial to John Lonsdale, Bishop of Litchfield. He was the last bishop to live in the castle at Eccleshall. That's very much a hunting dog, and of course the artist knew what hunting dogs look like. Here we have a bit more medieval glass. So that is the interior of this lovely little church. There we are, Piscina. There is no sedilia because of that tomb recess. I mean, unless that was originally the sedilia recess and not the tomb recess. But here we are. You see steps. Hang on a minute. Steps up. Yes, because we're in the side of a hill. So we'll go outside and see this building that's built into the side of the hill. So here we are outside at St Andrew's, Cubley, and you can see behind me these interesting domestic style windows and the tower there. And as we go around, we'll see the features of this building, and that you really, certainly from down here, the west end, you cannot tell this is a Norman church. The east end is a bit more obviously Norman. But let's have our look around. Also, here we are outside, and we have your typical medieval church with your west tower, nave, chancel. We'll proceed initially down the hill and then go back up again. So we will do the normal round the west end and then down and then up to the east. Here we have a 18th century gravestone, 1781. John, can't really make out his name. John Puntain, which is an unusual name, sounds French. Could be French, of course. We have this main road over there, and you can get a certain amount of, certainly I can hear the roar of the traffic. There we have the church, so we proceed all the way down here to the corner here. Over the road, in the Middle Ages, there would have been the manor house, just as at nearby, Norbury. But the manor house was across the road here. Now, the manor house is gone. All you can see today are some earthworks. And we'll just go up on this earthwork. You can just see there, see that little pool down there, that's the remains of the moat. And then the central earthwork, that's where the manor house would have been. There's a sort of square building platform. We're by a tree here, but you can see up there the porch that is quite modern. The porch looks Victorian. It looks to be the latest part of the building, with those wheel windows. The front of the south aisle looks to be relatively recent, perhaps 15th century, like the tower. The tower is 15th, maybe even 16th century. It certainly is very late medieval. You can tell it's medieval and not post-Reformation by some of the features. You can see there you've got the armorial bearings there. They've got quite rough work there at the front, at the west end of the south aisle. There again, the old manor house. You could probably, hopefully, you can just see there that outline of the moat, that raised square bit. And then the house would have been on that raised platform. It would have probably been like the old building at Norbury, solid. Here we have this marvellous perpendicular tower, and this is where you go up, and you can see that it's not exactly disabled friendly, not exactly wheelchair friendly. And that window there, that will be the tower staircase. We've got coats of arms either side. The village is over there, most of it. That, I suspect, well, that's up there, is going to be the old rectory, or vicarage, the old parsonage anyway, where the minister lived. These buildings are generally quite rambling, and being quite posh houses, they were sold off by the Church of England. I'm not sure. There probably are a few that are still in use, but here we are on the north side. Now, it's unfortunate it's the north side that you've got this view, because here you can actually see the progression of dates. You can see in the middle, in fact, there is some herringbone masonry, and there's that rubble work, and that suggests that is the oldest part of the building. In fact, that nave where we saw the Norman arches in the middle, and then the upper part of the walls is that rather rough shaped stone, dressed stone, and that then will be, when it was extended, made larger. The east end has lancets, but they are pointed lancets, which is early English, so that's going to be the second phase. And then the last phase is the tower. So you've got here, and we'll go a bit close, have a look at the herringbone masonry. You've got here this early Norman, by the look of it. I mean, herringbone masonry is that sometimes even Anglo-Saxon. So this is actually quite an ancient building, but you wouldn't know it from the windows, which do look to me to be they're either very, very late medieval, or more likely they are post-Reformation windows, and they're there to let in as much light as possible. Quite a contrast to the Norman windows, which would have been tiny little lancets, like the ones in the chancel, only smaller. And here we have this herringbone mason. You can see you've got this angled stonework of rubble. That is very, very ancient. That is going to be 11th century, maybe even 10th century. This could even be an Anglo-Saxon building in its origin, which would be quite very exciting. There we are again, looking down at the old manor site, and this lovely early English chancel, magnificent, with its pointy little pointy lancets. But compare and contrast the stonework. That Norman stonework is so much rougher than the medieval work, or the later medieval work rather. So we proceed up to the east end. There's the old parsonage up there. When the manor house was gone, I suppose the parson would have been the man in the village. You know, the gate there, because of course when it was the parsonage by, we have this very nice later medieval window, that tower, and at the east end, it's a rectory. As here is at the east end this is where the rectors would be buried. So here we have Cave Humphrey, rector of Cubley and Marston for 36 years, who fell asleep December the 4th, 1960, in his 80th year. And there we have, faithful unto death, and I'll give you a crown of life. So it's a magnificent place. One of my, as I've said, it's one of my favourite churches in Derbyshire. And there we have the very low-pitched roof of the aisle. And here again it's been rebuilt, the upper portions. And here the rough medieval stonework. So there we have it. Well, I'll say a few words in closing, and that'll be the end of this video. Well, so here we are, St Andrew's, Cubley. Overshadowed, as I've said, often by its near neighbour Norbury, but well worth a visit, and in fact the two really can be visited very readily, as I've done today, on the same day, just a few miles from one another. Well, thank you for watching, and again, as we come into 2022, it's good to be able to enjoy the English countryside, to enjoy these buildings, to enjoy our heritage. So thank you for watching, and may God bless you and keep you.